Hello everyone, this is Raven here with my first ever gameplay replay of the Wood Elves vs. Bretonnia. So I'm trying to do this in preparation for the Warhammer 2 coming out, hoping to build some hype. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the action because it starts off quite quickly here in this match and go ahead and review these armies. So as you can see, I have 3 units of War Dancers mixed with 3 units of Treekin as my front line. Now these War Dancers have really high weapon strength and those Treekin have a good armor and physical resist combination that helped them tank out the front line pretty good. So I was using this combination because I expected a very peasant-heavy Bretonnian blob to come my way, which I did see in this match. And in the back, you'll be seeing that I have 2 Glade Guard with Starfire shafts with that armor-piercing fire and magical damage arrows that are very good at taking out Grail Knights, Grail Guardians, and all the heavy cav that Bretonnia likes to field in their matches. And in the back, 2 Eternal Guard without shields to help support my archers and help circumvent any knights that flank my army and try and take out my archers before they can do their work with their armor-piercing missiles. So over here, you can see my lord and my hero mixed in with my cavalry contingent. They're both on their elven steeds with very good speed, mixed in with these wild riders with shields. They have very good weapon damage as well. And I was hoping to protect them with the shields from any peasant archers that are being firing in with their fire arrows or pox arrows to slow them down and prevent them from being able to escape whatever cavalry or flying units Bretonnia might field. So over here we have my Spellsinger with the Lore of Life. She has Regrowth and Earthblood mixed with the Scroll of Power and Arcane Conduit, so I'm expecting to do really heavy heals on individual targets like my Glade Lord or my Wild Rider should they get low, or, just Earthblood to keep my front line nice and juicy and healthy and be able to lay down the smack on these Bretonnians over here. And so for the Bretonnians, you're going to be seeing King Leon Kerr, which is some really high class stuff. As you can see, he has his Sword of Kuron, which provides that negative 30 armor and negative 36 armor defense, as well as his Lion Shield, Stand Your Ground, Deadly Onslaught, Beloved Son of Bretonnia, Ladies Champion for that good regeneration he brings to the fight, which keeps him in fights very long, and he can really tank out other lords in one-on-one fights. He's a good fighter, and he has that high armor-piercing damage while he's on his Hippogriff mount over here, Baquis, and with the Lion Shield, if he were to encounter an air-to-air fight, even with my archers firing in with their high armor-piercing damage and their magic and fire damage, some of that damage would be mitigated due to the magic resist and missile resist that the Lion Shield provides. Over here we have 3 units of Pegasus Knights. Now he kind of cheaped out on this one a little bit. They don't have that 20% physical resistance, but they do still have that bonus versus large and high weapon strength and good charging. So whenever these guys get in on Wild Riders or War Dancers in my front line, they're going to be doing a lot of damage against these low armor units that the Wood Elves tend to field besides their Treekin and stuff like that. Now over here for the main meat and potatoes of the present force, we see 5 units of Spearmen at Arms with shields to compose that front line, backed by a Grail Reliquary. So they're going to be immune to any terror that I might have brought, say if I had brought Deerthoo, but I did not. And they're going to have really good melee defense, so they're going to be able to tank out some of the damage that my Eternal Guard or War Dancers are going to be dishing out to them. And in the back, they got Peasant Bowmen with Pox arrows. Now, surprisingly, I thought he would have brought fire arrows because they're going to be doing that extra damage over here to Treekin, who have a 50%, I think, 50% weakness to fire arrows, which they do right here. 40%. There you go. So not as high as I thought, but still would have done much more damage than these Pox arrows would have. So with Pox, though, he does apply poison to all my units. They're going to be doing less damage and be moving a lot slower and do less armor-piercing damage, which will be good for him in the long run. And in the back, he has 3 Spearmen at Arms without shields just to help prevent any rear cavalry charges that are going to try and take out his archers right here. And then he has his own Damsel of Life with the Earthblood, Scroll of Power, and Arcane Conduit to provide some good healing, mass healing to these big old Bretonnian blobs, keep them in the fight longer, because they like to rout with their very low leadership. You can see it's 49 on these Peasant Bowmen. That's not very high. They get into any losing fight and they're just going to immediately rout. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. get right into the action. You can see I send forward my movement commands for my army, try and get them in the fight as soon as possible. Then I survey what the armies that the Bretonnians have, and I say, oh no. I see immediately that these Wild Riders are going to be shredded apart by these Pegasus Knights over here. So I immediately move them to start supporting my main line engagement and try and help support that by punching through with some charges straight through the front and hopefully shatter the morale of these spearmen at arms. So I go ahead and start moving my Glade Guard over here, and they start getting some initial volleys off just from some damage. And I'm going to go ahead and let my front line just engage, and then I'm going to look for any opportune place for my Wild Riders. Over here, though, you can see that he's being very, conservative with this Air Force. He can go in here anywhere and could have taken any of these targets out that are singled out. Right here you can see my cavalry force starts moving in, and you can see that these peasants are already being torn apart by my war dancers with their high weapon damage. And when these Wild Riders hit with their also incredibly high weapon strength and charge damage, that's probably just going to be backbreaking. These spearmen are just going to run away from the fight as soon as they go in. So you can see they go in, not an initial shock of leadership, but then as they stick in, that leadership wavers and then just breaks. So these are just going to flee from the field. From that point, I already have this whole flank crumbled, and I'm just going to bring my Wild Riders over here to help shatter the rest of his front line. And then in return, he countercharges with his Pegasus Knights, hoping to take out my Wild Riders to prevent any more damage that they're doing to his low armor peasants and take them off the field before they can finish their good work and hopefully get to their archers. So meanwhile, our archers are trading pretty ineffectively. They have so many models in each of these units and just so many more that I can't trade as effectively as I could with my archers versus his. So I start trying to single out my archers on his Grail Reliquae to remove that leadership buff that might keep their units in the game later when every point of leadership counts, when there's army losses and just attrition is set in really hard. Let's go ahead and hit play here, and you can see I just start moving my front line in, and I start trying to intercept anything that might be coming from his back line and support, and they just engage all across the line. War Dancers come in and start doing their charge animations. Treekin are running in, and over here you can see the Pegasus Knights are trying to follow my Wild Riders and stop them before they can come through and shatter the morale of more spearmen and arms, get into his Pleasant Bowmen over here. They decide to turn back, and then they're going to start charging again into some of my units over here. And they are not going to do as good as damage as he would have hoped. Because they're not the Royal Pegasus Knights, they don't have that magical damage, so my Treekin aren't going to be doing very well, and they're going to have a slight mitigation of damage due to my Wild Riders having a 20% physical resist of their own. And you can see they are just running rampant in the back lines right here. There is nothing these Peasant Bowmen can do to stop them. They are running through them amok. They just cannot be stopped. They are slaughtering these men. So as you can see, his Damsel of Life has also been routed from the field. She is running, and King Luan Leoncoeur is in good health with that regen, but his army is in shambles, and mine is fine. There is one unit of spearmen at arms over here holding, and only his Pegasus Knights and this other spearman at arm left on the field, while mine is at full strength. All my units are coming in hot, and they're just ready to end this fight. They're just putting the absolute beat down on this Bretonnian force. So I start pulling them forward, and I'm trying to get to his lord. That's what I really want. If I can break the back of the lord, the rest of the army is just going to shatter. A peasant without their lord is nothing. So moving the rest of my elfin force in here, I start trying to target these Pegasus Knights out, and then I'm going to start moving in for the lord, their king, as soon as they rout from the field. So you can see the leadership is just tanking on them. They can't deal with all these units swarming them. And then the king decides to not pull out and try and rally his forces over here into a main battle group, and he just stays in the fight. I have a little bit of mismicro there, but I get my troops back online, and they start going right after the king, and they're immediately going to get that rear charge penalty, and everybody's just going to be charging in. I throw everything in the kitchen sink in here. I got the Spell Singer, I have my Glade Lady in here. The king is not going to be liking this. You can see his morale's already tanking, but his HP is going to be regenerating quite quickly, especially if his damsel comes over here and starts casting a spell, which I believe she does cast a spell for Earth Blood on him. There it goes right there, and it's going to start healing him up, and he's going to be in the fight for a long time, especially with that leadership and melee defense buff he just popped. I'm not going to be able to do enough damage to him with my Glade Guard or Eternal Guard that are in there doing the fight, because my Glade Guard are shooting through trees, and these ones still have to get closer to be able to fire, so I'm going to just have to swamp him and hope that attrition's going to win the fight versus him. Meanwhile, my Wild Riders are still going through the back line, just tearing apart any returning peasants trying to come back and support the fight. So this is just so unfortunate. Peasants come back in large numbers to try and regroup. They typically rout from the front very quickly, but in the end, you can see he has 4 units right here and then 3 right here that all returned and wanted to return to the fight, but these wild riders just tore them apart, immediately sent them fleeing and these units fleeing over here as well. And from here, it's just going to be a battle of attrition. My units are just so healthy and I'm doing so much healing to them, and the king's just taking so much damage that army losses are just going to kick in here pretty soon and cause a mass rout. And there you go. The mass rout is caused upon the peasant line, and the king himself flees from the field. So what really caused me to win this is that my Wild Riders were undeterred from his Pegasus Knights, which he invested heavily into, each one being about 14 or 1500 gold each. That's almost 4,500 resources just wasted, while I had 1200 units of the Wild Riders just running rampant, able to destroy peasant after peasant after peasant. Each unit that they encountered, they were able to shred, and my War Dancers and Treekin just weren't focused down hard enough by his archers because they just didn't have that time to work due to the pressure that was applied by my Wild Riders, while his Pegasus Knights were mitigated quite intensely because they went into a blob and got stuck and weren't able to pull out from the fight like they should have been able to. In the end, I think that's what caused the end of the Bretonnians here, and I'll catch y'all later. Thank you for your watch. Like if you liked the video, and subscribe if you like my content. Catch y'all later.